Okay, we're running. Let's call the Finance Committee in January 26th to order. And we'll start out with the sales tax report, which we have the whole year in.
This includes fiscal year 2016, so we've got all of our distributions January through December, and as you're aware, the state transmits sales tax 60 days actually after the collection at the retail operations. So you have the December distribution would have been back into October. You can see is 1.3% over what we projected for the year. We had high months all the way from June, which was 15.7% greater than what we projected. Then we ended the month with about 1.3%, but as you can see, each month was over our projections, which left us 7.87% over the amount that we thought that we would have for retail sales tax.
It was just about the amount of the jail overage.
That's just what
So,
I was thinking. We managed
goodness.
to spend every penny of that.
Yeah,
And,
even before we got it.
$198,384. This kind of keeps in line with the city's budgeting practices, where you budget revenues historically conservatively, probably lower than what you actually get. And then as well on your budget side, you tend to budget a little bit high for your expenses, and they come in a little bit lower. So all in all, a good number.
REIT looks good and healthy.
Matched 2015.
Yeah,
Just
REIT.
about, within a few thousand.
REIT came in, and of course that December, January period of time is how the auditor asked us to distribute the end of the year. Because that actually has December and January's number, because up above you can see in 2016 we don't have a January amount. They have us recorded in the previous year for January distributions.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
These are our cash and investment totals by fund. This report that's in front of you currently. This is of December 31st, so the 13th month. These are actually cash balances. We've talked before about coming up with our beginning cash balance for the biennial budget. We just now have the 13th month run through the claims. The majority of those might not clear till February, depending on when people cash a check. But at any rate, we know what those numbers are. So the balances are healthy here. Feel comfortable about that. And so what we'll do with these numbers is go back and take the 13th month, consider our actual beginning cash fund balance, and then I'll report back to you in February, hopefully that early, so that we can true up our beginning fund balance to actuals. That's on the budget side. The money market fund there, that's the last figure there that actually shows you where the cash is. Well, we've got the money in 3 different places, as you know. That's in the state investment pool. Anything that's distributed to the state, we have an agreement where they just go ahead and deposit it into the state investment pool upon that, and it's recorded. Then, of course, the county has an investment pool, and there's money there. And there again, it can be transmitted. Their transmittals with property tax and whatnot can go into the pool and be invested there. And then there's a money market account there for $4.4 million, and that's actually in Kitsap Bank. So your cash is actually in 3 different areas.
Have you noticed, is there much of a difference between what we receive from the state investment versus the county investment?
Generally, the county, I'll bring those next time, historically, and just off the top of my head, generally the county can do a little bit better
Yeah.
because the way they structure their pool gives them a little bit more flexibility because the state's constrained under their investment policy to not have it go out as long.
Mm.
And it's a little bit more predictable at the county on how, when various funds are gonna spend their money. With the state, you really don't know if a county, like Snohomish County, might ask for money sooner, so they have to have more liquidity available to them.
Good
So
point.
it changes how they're able to play the yield curve.
Okay.
So the way I'm reading this, those funds were all very stable last year, which shows me that our actual general fund, what we budgeted and what we spent were pretty much equal.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And what I would say, on the budget side of the equation, we just printed out, and I meant to bring them up, and I apologize. We just yesterday ended up with the final budget numbers
Okay.
for 2016. So I ran those yesterday afternoon. If you'd like to have a copy of those, and you may want to, I'll send it to you in PDF.
Okay.
That'd be
And
great.
that'll be for all agency, for
All the
all
funds.
funds.
All funds.
And all departments. So this one that you're gonna look at has, you'll see negatives in certain line items. And you'll remember that, and this is important, I think, you'll remember that we have the preliminary budget, the adopted budget, the amended adopted budget, and now we have what the state calls the final adopted amended budget. And in each one, and what we do then is we'll go back at, first by department. Let's take the treasurer's office, for example. I know that HR's under us, our L&I line items minus $24,000 because of the way the state billed us. So we have a line item that's $24,000 in the red. Well, what they will first do, Corey Pearson's now has taken on that responsibility. She'll go through it, and now, after you see this report, she'll take it and she's gonna shuffle the different funds within the Treasury Department to see if she can balance that department. And 9 times out of 10, you probably can, so she'll take from this and that and say, okay, there's the 24,000. So what the state sees when we transmit it to the state auditor's office, they're gonna see the balanced budget. They're gonna say, oh, they were able to balance it. Let's say that I'm out of, there's not enough to cover the 24. Then, because anything in, I'm in Fund 1, finances in Fund 101, or 1, general fund. Then it could look and say, okay, well, the police department had 125. Then we're gonna pull it over from there, and you're okay.
So the overall budget is balanced.
Right. Where you get into trouble is if, in fact, that fund number, and we've talked about this, if the fund itself is in the red, then you have
A problem.
then you're gonna have to write some kind of exception and say, here's how this happened. If it's because you can't spend money that you don't have, and that's where that starts. You'd go back and say, we had the money. For example, we just missed a budget amendment or something like that. So I'll send you that, and you can go through those line items. I think it's helpful.
Okay.
I will talk about Mark and I went over this yesterday, and I'm glad I didn't know it, because I didn't want to be awake at night. But anyway, at the water sewer fund was 5 point,
.09.
yeah, it was over $5 million, of course. We came in with $4,000 under the line, the fund itself. So next year we'll monitor a little bit closer. We were fine in October. We had a lot of costs come in at the end.
Well, we did have, and I was thinking about our conversation, we did have, so we've, in this process, our budgets have gotten better and better because we have actuals. So those numbers have been tuning in a lot more. But at the same time, we still build in certain things like pumps and other, larger ticket items. In some years, we don't have issues. What we did have this year, and you can speak to that, we had a number of large ticket purchases that we had budgeted for, but they're budgeted kind of as an emergency. And we just happened to expend all those chits this year. And because we had the conversation, I was trying to think, well, yeah, it was like, we were like on, but why? Because usually we have a lot more each year. And it's in those sorts of larger purchases. And we did have a number of major water sewer issues this year that we had things break. So I think that was, I'm not saying that we won't manage it. We had been tracking really well, and then towards the end, we suddenly had, I'm trying to think offhand what some of those were.
And we got a number of issues. I mean, we've got some aging pump stations, so these pumps are, in need of, when you get a pump, let's say that Flower Meadows goes and you take it out to Pump Tech, they're gonna diagnose it for a couple $100, but a repair is $13,000. So if you have 4 of those within a couple of months, it starts adding up pretty quickly.
Right. So,
We used to
anyway,
use snow removal as a perfect example. You plug money in not knowing what's gonna happen, but some years in the year with extra money, and some years you're short.
yeah.
Depends on the weather.
So really, it's a situation where, one, to monitor it, and secondly, to know, and on these, even if you had a pump and you, say you put $90,000 away for a pump, and you get into it, it can be $108,000.
Yeah.
So even though you didn't plan on spending it, sometimes you spend more than you planned on spending. And it's that issue where what you didn't spend, as you get closer and closer to exact budgeting, then you don't have that type of leeway. So, it's incumbent to make sure that you, one, monitor if we're gonna go that closely, or give yourself some
Some leeway.
leeway, or you're gonna be doing a budget amendment at the end of the year.
Or we'll have another meeting Christmas week.
Right. So anyway, all in all, department heads have the budgets. That was the only one that was, I think, that you'll notice in there. But anyway, I'll send that out to you in PDF form later today.
Okay, Sitel.
Sitel, that's good news. The Sitel is down to moving to 365, which is the cloud update. You probably saw an email to all users that said that we have the plan to move that. I think it's on the 7th and 8th of February with Sitel here with the 2 technicians on the 9th. They say it's rare that you don't have some things that you're going to have to clean up, mostly at the user level. They don't really expect any kind of system-wide problem. But anyway, they will be on site, so we do anticipate that, and we'll send out another reminder to employees to be aware that we're going to move that. The good news is we're going to end the whole project. You remember our budget was around $165,000. We're going to bring this in under budget by about $45,000.
Wonderful.
That's significant.
There's a couple reasons for that. One is that I think on a management side, I feel good about it. We met about every 2 weeks. We had a conference call, and what that prevented was we never went down a pathway that was incorrect, had to tear it up and back out and do it over. So we were able to kind of anticipate. Sitel's excellent. So that was a big, big plus. The other thing is we didn't ever do anything parallel. In other words, if we were working on something here with Vince and Steve Havard, our new hire, Sitel knew what we were doing, and then they weren't doing it too, and vice versa. So we never got duplication. So that was a big, big plus. Having done this my 3rd time, I know that those 2 things we were able to avoid. The other thing was the hiring of Steve Havard, who had skills that had us to actually, as you can see in here, for example, there's one $20,000 piece, the workstation migration. He came in and said, hey, with certain software purchases, I'll be able to do that, software migration, so $20,000 of it right there. The other thing is I want to thank the committee and the city council, because the deadline to get this finished, is because you wanted it fast-tracked, and rightly so, was the end of the year. But you did allow us to roll it over and take the first 2 months of this year. Had we had the end of the year as the deadline, we would have never, I'd have had to throw money at it. Our one employee had time off, wouldn't have been here. Our new hire had already planned on a 2-week cruise which was a cruise, and then he landed and got on another cruise ship. So he did 2 cruises in a row. But anyway, with those gentlemen being gone, Sitel would have had to come in and do that to finish this. So that was a big help, so right there. So I'll be able to report with a larger report at the end of February, I believe, and wrap it up. We've documented everything. I'm putting together the big 3-ring binder. I'm still doing binders, and everything will be in there. And also we'll read up our booklet that allows us to run it out of a book, you know.
Parroting Allen, Steve's been phenomenal, our support person. If you haven't interacted with him, very customer service friendly, you know, to our users. We needed that, you know, and we really lacked that component in IT support here at the city, because we didn't employ anybody to do that job. So our users were really kind of on their own, and we're of the size of an organization that we need, you know, somebody to fix the print drivers and those kind of things, because we're not all experts in that.
2 things going forward for IT. We'll get this wrapped up. It's going to dovetail into the 720 building, which is going to be a project. I think it's going to get mentioned here pretty soon. And they'll come in and do the hookups for the computer and stuff. So we've pretty much calendared that in. And then you've always heard too that we've had trouble out at the shop. You always hear computers are slow, phones are bad. So anyway, working again with Steve, he's been out there several times, and once we get the 720 building back, he's going to go back. We're going to go through a process there, identify what the concerns are, what the problems are, get a list of those, come up with costs if there. But I think that he believes within the budget, we probably won't be back to you for anything.
Cool.
But anyway, we'll go through that and I'll report that project. So 720 building, probably March, April, and then roll into getting the public works shop people what they need. And on top of all this thing, which is taking a heck of a lot of time, was we rolled out the iPhones to every employee, so we standardized that. So the IT's been very busy. I'm very proud of them, and I'm really happy to be able to report that it was.
Somewhat selfishly, is the migration to the cloud going to affect, do we have to bring the iPads in or anything? Do we have any software that needs to be put on?
I don't believe so. I think it's all behind the scenes, but I'll follow up on that.
Okay.
I mean, we won't know until that day. You know, be mindful of that the 8th, when we do this, we could have user issues, and
Yeah, no, I
that could be, we don't think so, but
Do you use it elsewhere? 365 anywhere?
Well,
Yeah, it's gonna be your.
I use it at my office,
Right.
but I'm just wondering, we don't really use Apple or a Microsoft product for
Right.
emails and that sort of thing
Right.
on the city's iPad, so that's why I was wondering if it's gonna have any effect
I'll
on
You
that.
can always
have-
access it remotely from the web. It's
Yeah.
a little bit clumsier. than
And that's
having
the
like
only
Outlook,
way.
but-
I found the iPad useless for
Well, you should be able
myself.
to download Outlook. You should be able to put Outlook on
You
there. and have
can,
it.
you can put Microsoft product, I have Outlook on my,
Okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps I just need some training.
Yeah, and
But
then it'll read 365, so you're
Yeah.
not having to.
Yeah.
be on the
I
web.
actually have 365 Outlook on
Yeah.
my transit iPad, but the city's iPad doesn't use a Microsoft product and it's worked fine for me. As long as I remember
This
to
is me.
grab it,
Yeah, it's me.
turn it on, oh, I know.
I find it much easier just to go to the web.
Yeah, but you're still grasping onto that abacus.
That's right. That's right. You got that
You
right.
have to hang up your phone to get online too?
You gotta tell the neighbor to get off.
I'm on the internet.
So anyway, I'll have Steve follow up on that specifically. So, and the other thing, and this is the last of it, we started an IT staff meeting that we have each Friday morning, and that's been really well. And we're still, moving to have a lot of things done remote by Steve and Vince Tucker, be able to do things remotely so that they don't have to drive back in here. And that seems to be working real well, the new system.
It's incredible. One of my IT guys can get on, diagnose a problem, and fix it with his smartphone
Yeah, that's-
remotely.
Right.
I can't even call on my smartphone, let alone work off my desktop, so.
So you have warranties on everything that go out to the edge of when they're warranted, and those are paid and set up. We got a credit card that's under the treasurer's name, it's only for IT, because so much of this stuff is reoccurring charges now, they'll only use a credit card. I set that credit card only up for that, not for purchases, only for reoccurring charges. You've got Sitel on contract, they're about $175 if you call them, but if you ever get stuck, you've got that. So you've got warranties, you've got Sitel, you've got Steve Havert, we've got Vince Tucker. When this is finished, the mayor and I are gonna meet with Bud Harris from the county, go over this whole piece. I'll have it documented by that time. Reiterate that arrangement we have with the county. So you're gonna have an IT system here that's up to date, it's modern. Anybody use the word modern anymore? And then we'll be able to go forward. I think you should feel
I
comfortable.
don't think you do that with IT anymore.
That's right.
When we met with Bud a year ago, I mean, we were in rough shape. We didn't have any modern servers. Now we have all modern servers, and I have Kevin Kelly's wife works in the IT department as a service tech. And over the holidays, I was talking to her and telling her where we're at. She goes, we were way behind, and now we've actually leaped the county because they aren't as far along in their migration to cloud-based servers
I was
as
gonna
we
say, I
are.
don't think they're on.
They're working through that, but we have a smaller operation.
You know, and it goes without saying, you keep this maintained, it's gonna be cheaper in the long run.
Yeah.
So you're in good
Absolutely.
shape. So thank you for your support on that and getting that done. Then my final piece is the 2015 audit. It's gone a lot slower, not because of anything the city's done, it's really on the auditor side. At the end of the year, they got pinched on what they were trying to get accomplished. They did have a couple key people out ill. So we should have that back. I'm supposed to meet with them on Friday, and I'll have, the exit conference, we'll get it set up. The one issue that we've been dealing with are procurement issues, and we had this discussion last year with the auditors. They've asked that we continue to tighten that up. We've got some ideas on how to do that. We're working towards those. If in fact the auditor has anything in writing on that, I'm waiting for that, so that if anything I write down procedure-wise or going forward, I'm waiting to see what kind of response that is. I don't expect an audit finding, but they might write something in a management letter, which, we had a management letter, I think, that first year I was here. But anyway, we will just, take care of that situation in kind.
What's their concern?
It was the purchase of the vehicle last year. I think that Rob may have mentioned it to you. And so, anyway, it's a purchase of a vehicle. And then, once that happened, they look at the whole piece and they want the procedure
Yeah.
structured stronger. Plus, on top of that, the federal guidelines came out now that if you take federal money, you have to have the 4 deadly sins addressed. That was the final resolution of 2016 was the one I brought forward, and I said, here's, these temporary rules, and you have 90 days to write new rules. That was to avoid any kind of problem with the auditors, say we were addressing an issue we had. There was one provision in there that you had to have in place, which I wrote very generically, and they said, okay. And that then leads into the fact that Brandy talked to you about the procurement rules that we're writing, and I'll just kind of turn it over to her. But Cindy Palmer, Brandy, and then Rebecca Nichols, at the staff level, have been working to consolidate the procedures that will flow through on the procurement side of when an agency wants something. Here's how you go about, here's where the request is made, here's how it's processed, and then how it moves in all the way to accounts payable, and is approved by council, and then where that's necessary, and then goes through accounts payable. So we're working on all that and should have that product done within the 90 days.
The goal is to get it to the council by the end of February. So we presented you a draft draft document at the last work study session.
What's your next item up for bid?
So sat down with, like Alan said, Rebecca and Cynthia, and got some notes, some things that I need to tighten up in here in the document policy. The other thing that we've initiated, which we're hoping will help with the procurement process, is a contract routing sheet, which basically, the thought of this is, it's still a work in progress on this part of it, but the thought is to say, hey, any contract that they're getting to work on, you need to fill out this form to make sure that we've, what type of contract it is, what type of steps have we gone through to make sure that we've selected it accordingly. Did we select it off the vendor roster? Did we go out for an RFP? That type of thing. What the contracted amount is, what the applicable sales tax are, or any type of taxes, leasehold, real estate excise tax, those type of things. Just to make sure that we have scope of services included, what is it that we're contracting for, hold them accountable for the services, which we're 100% on that. That's no issues. Just keeping one form for everything.
And this, and all these questions then tie back to the existing state statute. So we're trying to do it by reference. In other words, follow the state statute that's applicable to a city our size. And then that then leads you back to, okay, we've got these things covered, we'll tie back to the statutory construct. So we're not gonna have more draconian rules for ourselves than what the state would require us to have.
Which is what we have currently, and we're trying to update those.
Yeah, we're more strict than what the state requires us to be, and that causes us constraints.
I mean, we're just about there, and we're doing just about everything correctly. There's just a few things that we have to tighten up on, and we're gonna make it seamless, hopefully, for all the departments to really understand, when you go out and purchase something, what are the rules? And we'll even mimic, Cynthia found this, that we'll even mimic something that MRSC has that says, hey, if this is the public works contract, what's the dollar amount, what's the, what type of service is being done, and then it'll just be a flow chart that they can just follow and say, okay, yeah, this is what I need to do before we can go and bring it before the council. So there's some steps that's in place, so that way, we're not having an extra meeting at the end of the year. Again, this is to meet the federal guidelines and state guidelines.
There may be one last follow through with the contracting. I mean, this is the procurement side, but then you have to have the appropriate vehicle to procure.
Right.
And, 9 years ago, we had one professional services agreement for everything, and now we have, I think, in our folder, we've got 9 different contract types, everything from ordinary maintenance and on-call, work under 10,000, work technically that would be over 300,000, but when we go to add, I mean, we have these, but we're also, now there is a new one we talked about the other day, which is a purchase service, because there's a number of services they're very gray. It's not necessarily work, but it's not necessarily a professional service.
Well, and that's why we're working at getting this at the staff level.
Right.
Because we're gonna try to use our training dollars to send those people that have the day-to-day responsibility of processing this to know the rules. So when Alan Martin says, I think it's this, I want the staff person that says, well, I went to the training and
I deal with this
know-
every day.
I deal with it every day and I know it's that. I mean, my goal here would be to buy the widget correctly. I just want the widget as a manager.
Right.
And as long as they do that right, I'm happy. I mean, I don't,
And you get your widget.
I just want the widget as a manager.
So we may end up with yet a few more different contract types that we talked about that Lighthouse will have to approve at the end. And then we were going to distribute, kind of when we got to the end of this, then instead of the police department using a different contract than planning or public works, we're all going to be using
Standardized.
the exact same contract.
But
And most of the
you just really
contract
need to get
language
this
is
at the staff
RCW
level.
driven as well, so it'll all be tied into the same state requirements, federal requirements, through the procurement policy, purchasing policy, all the way to the end of a contract when you guys see it. Be all consistent is the goal.
And what Alan keeps speaking here to is to, Cindy, who's Mark's right-hand person over in Public Works, and Rebecca, who's who's Alan's right-hand person, really need to be our internal experts. They're the ones that are gonna do all this procurement. We need Mark working on an $18 million road project, not figuring out what type of pins and how we acquire pins
And is this
or even $30,000 trucks.
is this for the things the city purchases? This is, do our contracts, like the decant facility, will all of those purchases run through this
This is,
process?
you've got four main, I think we have four main categories. You have work, so anything that involves a screwdriver or building a freeway. You've got professional services, which has a small subcategory of personal services. There's very few of those, but professional services, so you're hiring a consultant to do a study. Then you have this whole purchasing category, which is I want to buy a hammer or I want to buy a truck. And then there's this new one, new for me, which actually was a good category because when we came into the meeting, I had this entire list of things that were gray. They're like, what are they? Because when the shredder guy comes in, is that,
Right.
what is that? And so there's a category called purchased services. And so it's really seeing, which category you're in, and then once you're into that category, what are the procedures in
And
which
this
to procure?
this is what's gonna, so once he identifies what, of the four categories that we have, what is the process, and this document will step them through the process of selecting a contractor.
Right, and my goal on this, and when talking to the auditor staff, state auditor staff, is to have the process where a manager just says, I need the shredding,
Mhm.
and I want it picked up Tuesdays and Thursdays, or whatever.
Right.
In other words, Alan Martin should only be giving them the requirements of the city to a procurement officer, and have the procurement officer come back and say, here's the 3 bids. Here's who does this, here's the 3 bids. Here, it fell into this category. Because that's where our training dollars need to go into, is that staff level that will process this. And as over time, your 90 employees are gonna learn that, hey, if you need something, you go to, you fill out your bid requirements and you turn it in. And you'll be instructed by the people that have the training and where our training dollars have gone. And who sat at the table with the auditors when the auditors have come in and say, okay, dump everything out on the table that you purchased last year. And have that person be the one that's responsible to say, here's what I did. And here's how I got the widget, and Alan Martin wanted the widget, and here's how I got him the widget.
And right now, we have too many people doing their own purchasing, doing their own
But we've
roles
grown,
and their own-
we've
Right.
grown, and we've lost some senior people and through retirement, so this is a timely.
Yeah. We're
Yep.
dealing with that over the transit as well, so, other than we're kind of heading, not completely, but more to centralized purchasing, and we still want to leave each department with the flexibility to
Absolutely.
deal with, so,
I get that, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
yeah. All right, anything else on purchasing?
It's just that the 3 ladies working on it, and then the rest of the greater staff has been really good at
Good.
adapting this and being open-minded to where the city needs to go.
It's a good project.
So 720 building.
Yep.
Okay, so last year we bought a building for $230,000. We felt that we could have our staff do a majority of the work, and we had a cost estimates of roughly $70,000 left in the budget to perform that work. As we got to the bid part of it, we had Public Works out here doing chimes and lights and other issues in the city, and the thought was, well, we had Tom Herstad do our, we have to have permits and plans just like everybody else. Tom Herstad did our drawings, our bid specs for us. We put it out to bid, but at the time we were busy. The thought was, well, let's just see what we get for bids, and we'll bid all of it and have us really do none of the work. And we've done some demo, a bit of demo, expose some things so that we could determine what's there. And the bids we got, the high bid was as much as we paid for the building, which would be a good investment. The low bid was $125,000, so we lacked budget authority. We were coming to the end of the year, and we just kind of parked it on hold. And through that process, I kind of turned this to Thomas. Thomas is we sat down with the low bid, even though we didn't award. And reviewed what was in that. We're going back out to bid with a bid structure that has line items that we have. The first bid didn't have that ability. We couldn't pick and choose the work. This bid process has that ability because our paint bid was like $11,000. We can paint the inside of a 3,000 square foot building. We know we can do some more of the demo. We hoped we were going to do all the electrical ourselves, but one of these big sewer pumps that went out here a couple weeks ago, our electrician was operating the winch type crane structure we have on one back of the truck, and the boom came down and clipped the tip of his finger off. So he had surgery on Tuesday. We may not be able to do that electrical work ourselves because he's going to be on light duty for a while. So we'll be coming back to you.
Will he still be able to string that wire to that?
Well, it's his right hand. It's his right hand, and
his
it's
right hand is its index. Right?
Well, I
Index
was
thing, yeah.
suggesting he's directing others to
That's
light duty.
We've talked about
We've
that.
talked about that.
We've talked about that. So we're uncertain.
No, I understand.
How that's going to play out. I mean, the building needs a panel, and it does need extensive electrical and IT wiring in it, and lighting.
He had been programmed from the beginning. He had been programmed as probably the main, doing a large body of work.
Yeah.
So
we've got it. It's out on the street for bid right now.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah, we'll be coming back, and I'm hopeful that we can do this around 100. Is based on what we got for a bid last night and what we feel we can do. And we won't know, but we'll be back the next council meeting, I think, to award a contract and to do a budget amendment. And if you look at your it'll come out of that REAP 1 fund is still, I think, the identified source for that. So we've got still have money in there. We just didn't have a sufficient budget authority at the end of the year.
Did we plug the 70,000 carry over into this? So we'll have to take the full amount out of it.
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, we let it expire. We knew it wasn't going to be enough. We were going to have to do an amendment anyway, so let's just do it for whatever the amount is as we get closer. So the goal is, maybe April 1st, we'll have everybody moved across the street and move forward on that. Just another quick one, facilities-wise, before I jump into Tremont. Our boilers, we've got, I'll be February's work study going over the energy audit with you guys. There's some great information in it. Just gonna put that on hold through the holidays too. If we add on to this building, we want one heating system for the whole building. What we have isn't the right animal. We can, if we have to, we can go that route. But ideally, and we'll go over that in the energy audit, it'll be a system that's got coils in the ground, and we go away from these boilers. So it's a different technology, which is good. What we don't, we've got 90,000, 70,000. So we've got a chunk of money in the budget to replace our boilers. Our current contractor's telling us that services it says we need to replace our boilers, and we had a number of challenges this past year with our boilers evacuating the building because we were getting gas smell in the building. When we started a process yesterday was we're reaching out to the manufacturer of the boilers. We want to get someone to come in and potentially service the boilers and TV the inner workings of the boilers, and really what's the energy audit consultant has told us, if we can get 7 to 10 years out of these boilers to where we get to a point we're adding on to the building, then we abandon these boilers and get rid of them. If we can't, then we're gonna have to repair these, and we'll keep these boilers, and half the building will get heated with one technology and the other half another way. The energy audit pointed out about $25,000 in improvements that we can make to the electrical side, from switches to, there's various components in this heating system that we could benefit from improving. And I'd like to use the boiler dollars, if we know that our boilers can get us down the road, to make improvements to the heating system. But so we got a chicken and egg first. We need to determine
Hopefully we can put a
Heating and
Band-Aid on it to hold us
heating and
over.
cooling from a heating. Yeah, so we got it, and we might have, so I'm going to use some of the dollars that might be needed to replace the boilers. And if we determine with that, I'm just not comfortable with the guy that's going to sell me the boilers telling me I need new boilers. I want somebody independent. This is a big ticket item, and we really don't want boilers if we can get far enough down the road and get away from them.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at on that, and I'll give a complete overview of the energy audit at the next work study.
Okay.
Tremont. So Brianna's working on a number of issues for us, but the two that are monetary, trying to get us, are the Pocket Park and the Tremont. And I talked to her yesterday. Our Pocket Park is not competing well because we're not far enough down the road. I don't have her. We just approved the contract for the pretty drawing, and by the time I get the pretty drawing, the cake's going to be baked down in Olympia. So she says we need to, I've planted the seed on it, but we're not competing well right now on that. So we probably won't get anything for this Pocket Park this go around. On Tremont, she's getting pushback. We need a letter. She's asking for a letter that we have dire circumstances, and that's why we need the money from the legislature on Tremont. And talking to Alan, that's not probably the letter we want to write, because if we're not successful in getting all of our money at the
We
legislature,
don't want to go to a lender and say,
Say-
gee, we're in dire circumstances.
Well, and in their email, they use the term default,
Mhm.
which is a defined term.
Yep.
And because we wrote a supplemental budget, and that your treasurer's carved out a financial plan which went to TIB that said, here's how we're gonna borrow the $8.3 million, it's somewhat opposed to the fact that we go back and say, well, we would default on this.
Yeah. It's not a
Well,
good thing.
it also goes against what's in place with both TIB and PSRC, is that you will be a fully funded project, and the verification of that. So it's a bit contradictory.
Well,
So-
and it gets worse, because the city's gonna have to put out for a borrowing a preliminary official statement and an official statement that goes to the bond market. It's filed back in Connecticut, and it's controlled by the Securities and Exchange Commission. We sign off on that, because.
So is there a way to write a letter that
Yeah, well, that's-
gets
and
to that point?
that's-
Says, look, we have a plan in place, but
That's
it's just
exactly-
less than ideal, and if we can have any
Yeah.
assistance to help reduce this indebtedness. we-
You're spot on, John. And that's the conversation we had. She's got to go back to Jan, and then Jan's dealing, whoever the senior transportation guy is, to say, hey.
Senator King. Curtis
So
King.
yeah, we're gonna lower our request, and if we get $300,000 or $500,000 for Tremont, it was a victory.
Yeah.
And because our request is for a boatload of money right now, and so we're going to write a much softer letter that if we're forced to borrow all of this money, it could impact our ability to hire police. As we grow as a city, we may not be able to hire additional police officers or maintain our roads to the level that we would like to, and so that's where we're
It's a
at.
20-year encumbrance. We'll make it through, but it's going to be an encumbrance.
And I think that letter needs to be signed by the mayor and not the treasurer.
I'm sure Michelle will go to bat for you.
I'll help with the language. I'll write the letter.
He wants me going to jail and not him.
my bonds are higher than yours, which makes me more personally liable.
So anyways, I just wanted to share with you that we had a request for a letter that we weren't comfortable
Yeah, I-
writing.
And we thought we'd better
Understand why.
tell you guys.
Yeah, that, and we're not, we're backing, and Brianna's nervous. Well, she goes, are you telling me you don't want me to get any money for Tremont? And I said, no. She goes, because if I can't get you the park money and I can't get any money for Tremont, then we're not gonna have, I'm not gonna be able to bring you anything. I'm sure you're gonna do fine, Brianna, and she's working on other issues from there's some legislature hearings on this, the cell, what were those called, mini
Cell towers, yeah.
Yeah, and they're really trying to get from the legislature the ability to be treated like Puget Sound Energy as far as our right of way. But then
Get out of the way, we're coming.
they had a meeting. Mr. Bediner shared with me. They had a meeting with the county telling them we don't need your permits. We're going to build four of these stations. So Scott and I. He gave me their attorney's information. We may, even if the legislature doesn't do this, we need to probably get out in front of this, and I think we need to partner with the neighboring cities in the county, because the county's got a whole bunch of attorneys on staff.
Well, I would think just about any public agency that owns right of way or any kind of property.
So that's one of the things that's brewing down in Olympia. These micro sites, small cells is what they call them. And what I shared, I said, well, other than the antenna might be small, but the rest of that infrastructure we saw is anything but. And we don't, we're not comfortable with having those everywhere, because the problem is all these providers don't want to share it. Verizon wants theirs and Sprint wants theirs, and so we're gonna have, and every one of them wants a half dozen of them in your community. So it's, so strengthening our undergrounding ordinances, I think, is going to be important.
Yeah, I mean,
and looking at our
it's a
code.
double-edged sword. I mean, from the aesthetic planning perspective, that's the issue that you're talking about.
Mhm.
That we don't necessarily want these.
We want them.
But-
We want them in an attractive manner. That's
Right, but the procurement side, to have to go through, with them not being a franchisee, and then it makes things very difficult for each site. If they're a franchisee, then they've got their bond, which is not just each individual, they just have a bond on file. Traffic control plans are prepared correctly. It's the difference between when we issue a right-of-way permit to PSE or Cascade Gas. It's just boom, it's very easy to process. They get in and do the work, versus when we issue a right-of-way permit for, Joe Blow that's just doing this thing, and it's like, he doesn't know how to put a traffic control plan together, he doesn't have bonding.
There's another piece to this too. The public owns certain right-of-ways, we as citizens, and if a private business is going to benefit by the use of that property, to what level as we as citizens that own this get
Get
compensated?
benefit, yeah.
And so some of this is whenever you hear a company say, I don't need you, I think you really have to sit back and say, well, wait a minute, you do. We own this and we're gonna assert our authority over it and we need to be compensated for it. Outside of the aesthetics and the administration of it, what's that worth to us as citizens if they're gonna use
And I
it?
Plus
think
you
every
have-
city's dealing with this right now. And
They
I
are.
think the companies are wising up to it. I mean, the presentation I happened to be at from the Bremerton City Council, I was there for another reason. It was through Verizon, and they're leaps and bounds ahead of where
Yes.
this other company is.
Yes.
Their technology was very attractive. It
Yeah,
was not a
and-
nuisance whatsoever. They were paying good dollars to rent that portion of the right of way. I
Perfect.
mean, they were, so I think it's maturing. So if we, like you said, if we can kind of
yeah.
tighten up a little bit, buy us a little bit of time, I think all our concerns are gonna be worked through because they're shared everywhere.
But if in fact they get this legislation through Olympia,
Right.
we're taken out of the equation.
Right,
period.
right.
Yeah,
That would be
and
bad.
I don't know that it's gonna happen because the guy that was sponsoring the bill is the guy that got tapped for one of the assistant secretaries in an eponymous administration. So all of a sudden, boom, he's gone. So, but it woke everybody up to go, wait a
Trump-
minute.
Trump administration.
Or Trump administration, I'm sorry. But what I'm afraid of is we, as the city of Port Orchard, don't want to take on Verizon or Sprint in court.
No, I
I
agree
think
with your thought.
we want to get out in front of this a bit and put some staff resources to it.
Try AWC and
Yeah.
That reminded me, are you finished?
Yes.
Cascade Natural Gas franchise fee. I'm working with Sharon
Oh,
to bring that
okay.
forward as early as the last meeting in February or sometime in March.
okay.
So you'll see that.
Because that was part of our funding
Right.
for the budget.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
We will get probably a little bit of comment on that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's, the decision,
Right.
was part of the funding package.
So we'll have that come forward. And then we'll have, on the work study, we'll have our bond counsel and investment banker come and give a presentation on the bonding for Fremont. And we had that set on our bond count, that'll be presented, our calendar of that process. I had borrowing earlier, but now, because we don't have, I've got it set up to know and do it at the time that you let the contract, because then we'll actually know how much we need to borrow.
And you indicated that PSRC is going to be able to commit to our 1.5 million or 1.7 million on
1.6.
2.9 or 2.8 or
480.
whatever.
Yes, we are on the non-advanced construction list. They were able to take the 30 million that they did have and have a few of some other larger sponsors of design projects that weren't in dire straits revise their schedule. So that takes care of 17. And we'll revisit this in 18.
What other people may not know is PSRC, the federal funds flow through PSRC, and they obligate money every 2 years. They award money every 2 years to projects, and they, for lack of a better word, lost control of how much money they had committed to, and they had overspent.
They overcommitted.
They overcommitted, and so they have told people that were money in 2017, we don't have it to give to you. The money's there, but it may not be available till 18 or 19. And it put a lot of jurisdictions, such as ourselves
Or Kitsap Transit.
and Kitsap Transit,
Yeah,
in a real ugly place, and 305,
Mhm.
Highway 305. I mean, we have projects ready to go, and they were gonna say, well, you prepay, you pay for it and we'll reimburse you, 2 or 3 years from now. Well, that's not gonna work. So,
Yeah, that was the advanced construction piece. Those that can advance construct, they would advance construct. It's just interesting that we went from we've got too much money and we're not spending it, it's on the books, and so they did that emergency action, or we're gonna have to send it back to Washington DC.
Right.
So they went through that whole thing in 3 years. Now they're completely upside down of that. It's, we overcommitted. And I don't know, I just sit back and scratch my head.
Spend our money
Well-
while it's there.
Well, and so luckily we're, we did a survey, I asked to be put on that list, and
Doesn't appear
for
we're-
us, the basis is that, and it was, the interesting piece of this is they did finally, for the first time in the 9 years I've been here, prioritize construction. That surprised me, because they've never ever done that. And when they went through that final list, they finally did that. Over what they originally said in the survey, which is they were gonna prioritize projects that might lose funding, other funding sources.
That was because Beck asked about that.
I've put some pressure, the other part of that is, I question PSRC and I question the state, because the money that PSRC divvies out actually is sitting in Olympia, it's sitting with the state, and the state is the one that said, PSRC, we haven't got any more money to give you. But being the recovering banker that I am, I can't imagine that there isn't a spreadsheet somewhere that says, you know, this is how much money we've spent.
We should email them one.
I mean, it's just real basic accounting, and it just
Well, they
doesn't
had-
seem to be getting done.
You had a lot of this going on.
Oh, yeah.
You have a lot of people in charge and not many responsible.
Nor are they talking to each other.
Nor is anyone, you just have had auditors in your office for how long? And, you know, is there no one auditing the financial component at PSRC? I mean, I don't know. That's my
Well,
next question.
It's a good
Well, yeah,
question.
Yeah, but they're not, they are auditing them.
The expenditures, but not the commitments.
But not the commitments. I mean, that particular, I mean, regardless of how they're spending their operational money, but the money,
That they're committed.
It's
that
the
they're
commitments
committed.
and the
Right,
challenge.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an administration problem.
yeah, oh, exactly.
Yeah, PSRC was blaming WashDOT, and WashDOT was blaming PSRC. So.
Can we,
There was a
Yeah,
communication there.
I'm gonna have to run here shortly, so can we schedule the next meeting? I've got a conflict on the 23rd. I was wondering about the morning of the 28th. Rob, you and I have a meeting at 8:30, but we could slip that.
Mhm.
I don't know what you have before that. How's that work for everyone? Tuesday the 28th?
Say it again?
Tuesday the 28th of February?
Works for Alan Martin.
Yeah.
7:30.
That works?
Yep.
Okay, 7:30 here at 28th then.
Plug it in.
Yeah, yeah, that's a Tuesday.
Yep. There's no council meeting that night.
Yes, there is. That should be the fourth
It's the
Tuesday.
5th.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the 4th, all right.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
It's
There's
February.
two signatures, I think one here.
Then you go to the
one
long,
on
don't go for a long spell after. What's the 3-week one?
this one.
It's this month, and it's.
Oh, it's right in front of us now, right?
Yeah, and
I will.
what's gonna happen is it's gonna separate the AP checks from the payroll
Is this
checks.
work
So I'll
address?
end up
Do you
with
remember
checks
what
every
that-
Wednesday for about 6 months versus checks every 2 weeks.
Address. Just
So,
confirming that it's-
I got a couple more dates.
Oh,
I
on the
gotta-
payroll.
Yeah, the payroll, there's only 20 checks, but if I'm not here,
You're signing payroll? Oh, those are the payments that go to the.
not paychecks,
No,
but,
I
you
know,
know,
yeah, that's
you know,
withholdings.
the whole.
Okay, is there anything for the good of the order? If not, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was the issue date was 12, and the expiration date